Okay, welcome again at Taipei Discussion and Learning. Winter is slowly coming and we have a couple of more speeches, and then we're going to take a break to celebrate the Western first and then Chinese New Year. But before that, Ethan Kegley is going to do a speech about permaculture. What is permaculture? We will find out from him. I know that he likes food, but not in the same way, not just in the same way as we like food. He likes to research food. He likes to cook. He's a good cook, and he mixes flavors and healthy food in his cooking. And this is one of the reasons why he wants to talk about permaculture, which is something, as I understand, and don't understand much, but it's to make us healthy and to make the earth healthy. You would ask yourself, okay, we would like to be healthy, but why the earth to be healthy? Well, because I guess it's connected. If the earth is healthy, then we can be healthier. So, Ethan Kegley is going to talk about permaculture.
Thank you. Okay, welcome. So, what do you see when you walk up to a permaculture farm? When you walk up to the front door or first come on the property? Maybe you don't know, maybe you've never been on one. But use your imagination and see how your imagination changes as I guide you through this permaculture farm. Note that what the farm looks like can depend on the season, the location, the types of soil, and the terrain where the farm is found. So every farm is different. Now, for your imagination's sake, let's say you've taken a ride today on onto our permaculture site on a biodiesel bus. Like, let's say we have a bus that takes you from the train station to the farm. So, welcome to my front door. What does my house look like? Try to picture recycled construction materials, composting toilets, solar ovens, skylights, open patios, greenhouses, ground cover front lawn, no grass, just ground cover like clover, things like that. Lots of flowers, bird feeders, and fruit trees around the parking area where the bus is pulled in. Step inside my front door. There's a book in the foyer titled History of Permaculture. You open up the book and start to read. You read in 1929, Joseph Russell Smith wrote a book called Tree Crops, A Permanent Agriculture, a book in which he summed up his long experience experimenting with fruits and nuts as crops for human food and animal feed. Smith saw the world as an interrelated whole and suggested mixing systems of trees and crops underneath. Smith was a proponent of the no-till method. Tilling is when you use a plow to mix up the earth before you plant. Probably one of the first images that people have when they think of agriculture is like a donkey pulling a till. So, what is the no-till method? And instead of tilling, you use ground cover crops such as wheat, barley, rye, and oats, which are much better than row crops, which is what you get when you till, such as corn, potatoes, cotton, and tobacco, because tilling exposes the topsoil to erosion. So Smith believed that his idea was a two-story farming method. Tree crops on the upper story, on the slopes, and grazing pasture land below. So grass and other ground cover on the low areas, and on the higher and sloped areas, tree crops. Both the trees and the ground cover in the pastures would be perennials, which means they come back every year. They don't need to be replanted. And both would encourage the regrowth of topsoil. Remember here, you're standing in the foyer reading a book. You're just reading the history. So an excerpt from a review of his book described some of the non-conventional farming ideas and crops. It says, hogs won't touch corn, hogs, pigs, won't touch corn if there are acorns to eat. Acorns are a tree nut. And oaks, which is another tree, oak, can produce more calories per acre than grain when done right. A top quality pecan tree can drop nearly a ton of nuts per year. Hickory nuts can be smashed and boiled to produce hickory oil. Pistachios fetch a high price and have a long shelf life. Many types of pines produce nuts. Pine is another kind of tree. The honey locust is a drought-hardy U.S. native that will grow where corn or cotton grows, and animals love the beans. Locust plant, you probably have never seen it or eaten the bean, but you've probably eaten products that have the bean in it. Locust bean gum is in many processed products. But I guess the beans themselves, animals love to eat. The sugar maple, which is another tree, maple tree, produces sugar. Persimmons are enjoyed by man and beast. Pigs and chickens love mulberries. And don't forget walnuts, beech nuts, almonds, cherry pits, soap nuts, holly, ginkgo, pawpaw, horse chestnut, osage, orange privet, wattle, wild plums, and choke cherries. So these are all perennial trees that produce food for people and animals. Remember, Joseph Russell Smith's idea was for tree crops and perennial grasses that would feed the animals, such as goats, sheep, pigs, chickens, and cows. Now, this book, Tree Crops, A Permanent Agriculture, inspired many individuals who wanted to work with making agriculture more sustainable, such as one Japanese man named Toyohiko Kagawa, who first pioneered forest farming in Japan in the 1930s. He managed to persuade many of Japan's upland farmers during the 1930s that the solution to their soil problem, the solution to their soil erosion problem was planting a variety of trees. Kagawa also advised that they could receive further benefit if they planted cropping trees, such as quick maturing walnuts, to provide feed for their pigs. The planting of fruit and nut trees on farmland aims to conserve the soil, supply food for humans, and provide fodder for animals, which are, in Kagawa's idea, the three dimensions of his system. Number one, to conserve the soil. Number two, to supply food for humans. And number three, to supply food for animals. Further on, the definition of permanent agriculture as that which can be sustained indefinitely was supported by an Australian named Yeomans. He wrote a book called Water for Every Farm. He introduced an observation-based approach to land use in Australia in the 1940s. And he had this idea, it was called keyline design, a way of managing the supply and distribution of water. He developed that in the 1950s. These are all, by the way, these are all important elements in what permaculture is now thought of. All of these things are different parts of the whole idea. Keyline design is a technique for maximizing beneficial use of water resources of a piece of land. The keyline refers to a specific topographic feature linked to water flow. So it might be a creek or a river or a lake, or just runoff, small rills of runoff from a mountain. Yeomans described a system of amplified contour ripping to control rainfall runoff, enable fast flood irrigation of undulating land without the need for terracing. So in a lot of places in the world, including Taiwan, you can find hillsides that have been turned into terraces where you can grow stuff, which has two effects. It uses the water efficiently and doesn't let it just run off, and it also makes a level place to plant. But it takes a lot of work to terrace the land. and pretty much changes it forever. His idea was that you can use other techniques to irrigate side slope farms without terracing. Keyline design includes irrigation dams, which would gravity feed irrigation instead of using pumps and pressure to water plants. The irrigation dams would also stock water and or would be used for stock water, for water for the animals, and yard water for watering the plants. Graded earth channels could be interlinked to broaden the catchment areas of high dams and conserve the height of the water and transfer rainfall runoff to the most efficient high dam sites. Roads would follow both ridge lines and water channels to provide easier movement across the land. So basically, you could imagine it looking at a map, an overview map of the land, and seeing how the land is shaped, where the water runs off from the top of the hills down to the river at the bottom of the valley, and then using that in how you design your farm. Another person later pioneered what's called a no-dig gardening method. This is kind of simple in a way if you just think of it as composting and mulching. The name of this person is Esther Deans. Let me describe it a little bit. The no-dig gardening method is where nature itself can carry out cultivation operations, meaning instead of going and working hard on the land by tilling it and adding fertilizers, you can mulch using composted material. So as the organic matter used as a mulch is added 5 to 15 centimeters deep on top of the land, which is then incorporated into the topsoil using worms. Worms move through the mulch and move through the topsoil, mixing it all together and creating very healthy soil. The worms and other soil life assist in building up the soil's structure. The tunnels that the worms dig provide aeration and drainage inside of the soil. The soil itself becomes a natural biosystem where you don't need to add any fertilizers or anything like that. Just plant the seeds and let them grow. Okay, now on to the star of the history book. A man named Masanobu Fukuoka, who in the late 1930s in Japan began advocating no-till orchards, gardens, and natural farming, or do-nothing farming is what he called it. In Japanese, that's shizen noho. In Chinese, it's zhiran nongfa. The 5 principles of his natural farming method are: human cultivation of soil, plowing and tilling are unnecessary. Don't need plowing and tilling, as is the use of powered machines. So no human tilling of the soil. Prepared fertilizers are unnecessary. Chemical fertilizers are unnecessary. As is the preparation of preparing compost. So I just gave this description of this one person who talked about no-dig gardening methods that used mulch and compost, but Fukuoka believed that you did not need to prepare compost, that the earth would do fine by itself. It's very interesting, this do-nothing farming. Weeding, either by cultivation or herbicides, is unnecessary. Instead, only minimal weed suppression with minimal disturbance is necessary. Applications of pesticides or herbicides are also unnecessary, and the pruning of fruit trees is unnecessary. Now, he was widely criticized in his own country and around the world. Even Wendell Berry wrote that his natural farming method would not work in the United States, and farmers in Japan said that the do-nothing farming method might as well be a grow-nothing method. What is important to me about this man is that his idea was like a philosophy. His philosophy was to investigate the plants, investigate the land, learn about them, but do as little as possible to disturb them. Do very little things to help them along, but nothing too invasive. And one of the big things that he brought back, something he reintroduced but also made better, was the use of clay seed balls. Clay seed balls were originally an ancient practice in which seeds for next season's crops were mixed together, sometimes with humus or compost. Not humus like tahini and chickpeas, but humus, which is like mulch soil that's been eaten by worms, or compost for microbial inoculants, and then are rolled with clay. So you have these rich soil balls with seeds inside of them that are rolled with clay into small balls. Then you could just throw them in the ground, and they would be like little bombs ready to explode in the spring and grow into plants. Okay. Good. So you finished the book on the history of permaculture, and you put down the book. You're still in the foyer, but you've got to walk further into the house. As you're walking down the hall, you notice that there are some writings on the walls. You look up to read the writings. You're walking towards the living room, and you notice these writings are the core tenets, the 3 core tenets of permaculture. Number 1, take care of the earth. Provision for all life systems to continue and multiply. This is the first principle, because without a healthy earth, humans cannot flourish. Number 2, take care of the people. Provision for people to access those resources necessary for their existence. Necessary is important, not just things people want, but things that people need. Can I have some more tea and water? Am I talking too fast?
No. Water's fine.
Number 3, share the surplus. Healthy natural systems use outputs from each element to nourish others. We humans do the same. By governing our own needs, we can set resources aside to further the above principles. So number 1, take care of the earth. Number 2, take care of the people. And number 3, share the surplus, share the extra, and share. So you've moved through the hall. As you finish reading the writings on the walls of the hall, you find yourself in the living room, where there are 12 photographs along the walls of the living room, representing the 12 permaculture design principles. The first picture, you see a picture of a woman studying the plants and soil on a hillside. This represents observe and interact. By taking time to engage with nature, we can design solutions that suit our particular situation. Take time to see how the land, plants, and animals act as a whole before deciding what to grow and how much to grow, etc. The second picture is a picture of a solar water heater. It represents catch and store energy. By developing systems that collect resources at peak abundance, we can use them in times of need. The third picture, a picture of a wonderful and complex harvest. So you can imagine a large table with many fruits and vegetables and nuts and beans on the table. This picture represents obtain a yield, ensure that you are getting truly useful rewards as part of the work that you are doing. The fourth picture is a picture of a TV turned into a flower pot. This picture represents apply self-regulation and accept feedback. We need to discourage inappropriate activity to ensure that systems can continue to function well. The fifth picture that you see is a picture of an old and beautiful nut tree orchard, an orchard of nut trees. And this picture represents the use and value renewable resources and services, the use of and value of renewable resources and services. Make the best use of nature's abundance to reduce our consumptive behavior and dependence on non-renewable resources. The sixth picture you see is a picture of worms turning in a compost bin. This represents produce no waste. By valuing and making use of all the resources that are available to us, nothing goes to waste. The seventh picture is a picture of a beautiful earth ship. An earth ship is a permaculture house, basically. The seventh picture is a picture of a beautiful earth ship with flowers on the outside walls and grass on the roof. This represents design from patterns to details. By stepping back, we can observe patterns in nature and society. These can form the backbone of our designs, with the details filled in as we go. The next picture, the eighth picture that you see, is a picture of a large rock in a field with a lamb in its shadow. This represents integrate rather than segregate. By putting the right things in the right place, relationships develop between those things and they work together to support each other. Number 9 is a picture of a wetland that recycles wastewater. This represents use small and slow solutions. Small and slow systems are easier to maintain than big ones, making better use of local resources and producing more sustainable outcomes. Picture number 10 is a picture of a garden with 100 colorful plants. This represents use and value diversity. Diversity reduces vulnerability to a variety of threats and takes advantage of the unique nature of the environment in which it resides. Number 11, picture number 11 that you see is a picture of a wooden wall covered in bean vines next to blackberry bushes and grapevines. This represents use edges and value the marginal. The interface between things is where the most interesting events take place. These are often the most valuable, diverse, and productive elements in the system. And the last picture you see is a picture of rice fields in flood season. This represents creatively use and respond to change. We can have a positive impact on the inevitable change by carefully observing and then intervening in the right time, at the right time. So now you've looked at all the pictures on the wall in the living room, and you finish looking at the last picture and you notice you're standing next to two big, nice, beautiful wooden doors with big windows in the doors, and you look out the windows and you see a food forest. Well, you don't really know what a food forest is right now, but it looks like a forest with some fruit trees and nut trees and food crops growing on the ground as well. Now your eyes are starting to become more tuned. So what you see are 7 layers. When you look out the window, when you open the door and you walk out, you see 7 layers, like a bean dip with beans and cheese and olives and different things, or a casserole, or like a lasagna or something like that, where you see different layers. Are you getting hungry yet? The top layer, the canopy, the tallest trees in the system. Large trees dominate the canopy, but do not saturate the area. There are patches where there are no trees. So large trees dominate but do not completely saturate. They do not completely fill the area. The second layer is the low tree layer. Dwarf fruit trees, citrus trees, and other short trees. The third layer are shrubs, a diverse layer that includes most berry bushes. The fourth layer is called herbaceous, maybe annuals, biennials, or perennials. So either plants that grow back by themselves every year or plants that you replant yourself. Most annuals will fit into this layer. Then there's the fifth layer, which is the rhizosphere. Root crops, including potatoes and other edible tubers. Then there's the soil surface layer. Cover crops to retain and lessen erosion, along with green manures to add nutrients and organic matter to the soil, especially nitrogen. Then there is the vertical layer. Climbers or vines, such as runner beans or lima beans, or it could be wine vines. Grape vines. Doesn't have to be made into wine. Okay, so now in this time you've actually been walking through the food forest and noticing all of these different layers. You've been looking up at the canopy and at the smaller trees and all the way down to there's some beans coming up a post over here. Maybe you've been getting down on the ground and looking around in the soil. After you come through the food forest, you notice that you're on top of a small hill, looking back at the house, surrounded by fields, farms, forests, and outbuildings. From this perspective, you notice what looks like it's separated into zones, of which there are 6, including zone 0, which is the house itself. Zone 0 is the house, or home center. Here, permaculture principles would be applied in terms of aiming to reduce energy and water needs, harnessing natural resources such as sunlight, and generally creating a harmonious, sustainable environment in which to live and work. Zone 1 is the zone nearest to the house, the location for those elements in the system that require frequent attention, or that need to be visited often, such as salad crops like lettuce, herb plants like thyme or basil, soft fruits like strawberries, raspberries. Your greenhouse would be there, and your cold frames for preserving plants in this fall and winter. Your propagation area where you're starting new plants. Your worm compost bin for throwing out your scraps and letting the worms do their business. And raised beds where you might grow flowers or vegetables just right around your house. Obviously, Zone 0 and Zone 1 are probably the only things that you would probably see inside of the city, where people actually have a small area around their house where they can grow something. They might have raised beds, like my parents in the United States have raised beds, and my dad changes every year what he wants to grow. Usually a lot of beets. He must love beets and basil, things like that, tomatoes. Okay, so Zone 2 is, this area is used for sitting perennial plants that require less frequent maintenance, such as occasional weed control or pruning, including currant bushes and orchards. This would also be a good place for beehives or larger scale composting bins. So you can have a small scale composting bin where you throw your waste first. This is called hot compost. You cannot throw that directly on your field or your plants. It will burn the roots. So you have to let it go once, and then you can actually throw it into a larger composting area. And at that point, when it becomes incorporated, then it's ready to go on your plants. Okay. Zone 3 is where your main crops are grown, both for domestic use and for trade purposes. After establishment, care and maintenance required are fairly minimal, provided mulches or other things is used. So if you use that compost and you make sure that the soil is healthy, then you really don't have to do very much. I mean, you have to plan what kind of plants might be good with other kind of plants to help each other. But as long as the nutrients are there, the plants should stay healthy. Zone 4 is a semi-wild area. This zone is mainly used for forage and collecting wild food, as well as timber production. So you might go and search for your mushrooms here, or catch frogs or something like that. Zone 5, so that's 6 zones, including Zone 0, is the completely wild area. There's no human intervention in Zone 5 apart from the observation of the natural ecosystem and cycles. Zone 5 is in a way, it's kind of a buffer zone if you have to buffer yourself from something. And also, it helps because you've got plants and animals, well, specifically animals and plants, but really animals that live there and are safe and can come out and interact with other animals to keep the small animal group healthy. Okay, so this concludes our tour of the permanent agriculture, the permaculture farm. You can walk back down through the food forest and back to the house and check out anything you want. You can try some of the fruits and vegetables, but mostly just observe and imagine. So, I'm basically done. Just 2 more things. What's new? I talked about history. What's new? This year, 2012, the University of Massachusetts Permaculture Initiative won the White House Champions of Change Sustainability Contest, which declared that they demonstrate how permaculture can feed a growing population in an environmentally sustainable and socially responsible manner. That's what's new. Now, I handed around some papers here, which I started a group on Facebook called Permaculture Farming in Taiwan. And there are some people in different areas. These people are in Yamingshan who've posted that they actually have sites that are ready for people to go and work on those sites. I interviewed 2 people from my Facebook group, 1 foreigner and 1 Taiwanese person. And I paraphrase the answers from the Taiwanese person just specifically for grammar and structure. But let me read these 2 interviews that I conducted. I asked basic questions. Is that the address?
Yeah.
I asked some basic questions like, why do you think permaculture farming or permaculture is important in Taiwan? What does permaculture mean to you? And what made you interested in permaculture? So, the first answer. Even without much experience in permaculture, one can become interested in the subject based on one's love of food. This is like me. This is not coming from me, this is coming from another person, but it sounds like me. I cook. I love to have fun with ingredients. I see cooking and playing with food as a gift. There are many people who don't care about or even have the chance to experience this gift in their lives. Permaculture reminds me of a gentle, quiet, yet amazing and exciting life, deeply connected with the food we eat. Here in the city, people are living their lives without really knowing about the life they live or without ever seeing life itself. Knowing what we are eating is important. Getting to know what we are eating is like entering a state of bliss. Nature can heal only if we would let it. Even just touching the mud is already a way to calm our minds. Connection with the earth can even be a cure for depression. Okay? And the second interview. Permaculture seems like a comprehensive system that can act as a blueprint for what she calls the new era, the post-industrial capitalist era. It seeks to place humans in the context of living within the world and gardening our food into the ecosystem, instead of ripping the ecosystem apart to make our food happen. It's using existing patterns of nature to create a food-dense environment. Instead of distributing or disrupting the patterns, it intensifies the patterns that feed us, enriching the whole ecosystem at the same time. Through permaculture, I'm reading this as an interview I gave, I can envision food forests as a gift economy and appropriate use of technology like plastics, using the last of the gifts oil brings to our using the last of the gifts oil brings to bring about a more livable planet. Appropriate uses of technology like plastics. Okay, I think of permaculture as well as a tool or lens through which to rethink our current practices of living, and to start from where we are to make the changes we are seeking in our current patterns of living. Okay, those were 2 interviews that I gave, and the answers from 2 interviews. Like I said, I started a Facebook group. We have 86 members. One of the members has some land in Yamingshan, and that's the stuff that I've passed around. So that's the end of my speech, and now I'd like to take questions.